I have really been looking forward to this show because my guest today knows a lot about probates. And anybody that knows me knows that I love probates. Bill Gross is an expert on Los Angeles probate, and he hosts a weekly call to discuss how to get sales in probate, how to engage probate attorneys, which is a big topic, as well as other probate related topics for real estate agents and investors. He was born and raised in California, and he's been in real estate for over 30 years and has closed thousands of transactions while helping his customers reach their goals. So welcome to the show, Bill.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Sharon. Appreciate it.
Tell me a little bit about how you got started in real estate. Everybody seems to get into real estate either they knew they wanted to be there or they totally didn't know they wanted to be there and they ended up in real estate. So how did that happen for you?
It was not my plan. I was in computers electronics out of college. In fact, during college, and then I went to college. And then when I graduated, I was in computers electronics, and then actually moved to Florida, which was where, at the time, the IBM was building PCs. People who know computers before there was Apple computers, they were dominated by IBM. I was in the Boca Raton where they're making them. It was like a gold rush. And my father was sick, and I wanted to move back to California. And so I was working with some investors to open a company in California. And it was dragging on. I went to lunch with my brother. My brother was in real estate. And on the way back from lunch, he said, "Hey, just stop in with me, pretend like you're my partner." And okay. So, we went in. It seemed kind of fun. And computers had been so, I think, more academic and impersonal for me. And we went to lunch again about 2 weeks later, and the same scenario. And he knew what he was doing. We went to lunch on the way back. "Hey, I have to stop in this office and drop something off. Just pretend like you're my partner." And I did it again. And I started asking questions. It seemed like a lot of fun. And so we worked together for a while. And then that's how I started it in 1986.
It's such an interesting story because I've talked to a lot of investors over the years through the podcast, and everyone has kind of a unique story, but there's always this pivotal moment when something clicks for them. So when did you discover probates? Because I know for me, I had been investing about 10 years when I discovered probates, because I started a long time ago. But how did you discover them? And secondly, what attracted you to that niche?
So I've been in real estate a long time, since 1986, and about, exactly 3 years ago, I had to really rebuild my business, my career. I think being older, I thought the right path was to go into management. When I grew up, to go from sales to management to ownership was kind of the path of corporate growth. And that's not true in real estate, and I regret that. But I spent like 8 years as a coach and mentor and executive for a company. And after doing that, in both cases, the companies were going nowhere. Despite all the talk and all the promises, these were companies that were not really built to scale and continue to grow. And so I was 60 years old, and I said, "Do I want to spend the rest of my life in a kind of dead-end corporate job, though I was going to making a lot of money, or do I want to have a little more control in my life?" And so I decided to go back into production full-time. And over my career, I'd come across probate transactions, but like everything else, it just seemed like an irregular problem that came up and you dealt with it. I would never really took it seriously. I took some training classes and learned a little bit about it, but never really made it my primary focus. But when I relaunched my business 3 years ago, I met with a coach who helped me understand the importance of branding and having a niche. And so I really took some inventory of what my strengths and weaknesses were. And at that time I was 60. So I'm older and didn't really have the energy of young people. I wasn't the young hip, person. Yeah. But my strength was, I think, maturity and experience. And I think that attorneys relate well with that. And I think people who look up to attorneys relate well to that. And so that was an asset. And I feel like I'm a smart guy, I can learn things. And so I started researching probate and really learning what it was about. And the more I did it, the more intriguing it was, and the more I could see both the opportunity as well as the challenge to learn, and the opportunity that if I really learned it. Most people don't spend the time to really learn something and be excellent at it. They do enough to get business and then went the next deal. So I took a training program, alltheleads.com, and the coach, Chad Corbett, challenged me to challenge all of us to go to court and just check it out. And I went once. It was fascinating. There were so many people there. There's so much stuff going on. And so I said, I'm going to go here the rest of the week. And I went there every day for about 3 hours for a week. And I kept learning so much. I said, well, I'm going to go the rest of the month. And I was doing that, writing out a business plan. And at the end of that first month, I wrote out a detailed plan, and I launched it 3 years ago. And here I am, this past 12 months, I've closed 42 sides and built a really nice business. I have a team of agents that have joined me as a result, and some other streams of income. So it's just been a fantastic opportunity that I built over the last 3 years from scratch.
It's funny. I've always worked off market deals. That's always been my thing, because I'm in a much smaller area demographically than you are. So, but we still have at this time something like 5,500 agents for a million population. We have a lot of agents. So I just never was the person that wanted to get in there and scrap around with all those agents, and as an investor and all of the the other investors. So I always worked off market deals. And when I found probates, I found them back in 2008. And Bill, there was literally nobody working probates back then. You would send letters and then contact these people, and maybe one or two other people, maybe. There was no competition. But I quickly learned that, like you, that I think with maturity, and maybe it's just a skill that you get that has to do with talking to people, because I was not the person that was born comfortable talking to sellers. That was not me. But there is, I love the niche. I mean, I love the people, because you get to help so many people. And when you focus in and you become an expert on something, they can see that, and it differentiates you from everybody else.
Right. I talk to people, I get phone calls regularly, and I think as realtors, it's frustrating that people who buy a house every 2 years talk to you like they know so much, because they go on Zillow and I can say to people, look, this is all I do. I know more about probate process in LA than attorneys do. I don't necessarily know the law, but I know the process. I know the procedures. I know the systems. I know the pitfalls better than attorneys do, because they do a lot more than they do. And if you want an expert, this is what I do. And if you don't, I appreciate that. I'm busy enough. I have a whole wall full of pendings and active listings, and I'd love to help you, but I don't need to help you. And I think having that expertise gives you the strength to say that. And I also think that it's about taking pride in your business and feeling good about what you do. 90% of real estate agents who say they're experts in probate have one deal they're trying to put together, and/or they mailed out to a list of people one time. They just don't really put the time in to learn the business. And I would just challenge anybody that the system varies by state for sure, and by county, the procedures change. And you can be an expert if you put the time in, but it does require a certain amount of time.
Yeah, I tell people that all the time. There are something over 3,300 counties in the U.S., and you have your state regulations, but then where you get the leads across the country is different in every situation. If you're really lucky, you can get them online. We're in the second tier of lucky. Everything's in the newspaper. I'm hoping that we'll get to everything's online. If you live in Fort Lauderdale, you're going to have to go to the courthouse, or New Jersey. And it's really hard to scale a probate business getting your leads that way. It's just really hard. But if your leads can't be pulled online through one of these open APIs, then you're not going to get the leads that way. But what you're doing, what I have been preaching to the choir for so long about, this is an untapped area for realtors. It is an opportunity, because you will never run out of leads with probates. Literally. I mean, it's the cycle of life. And that's not meant to be anything but just a true statement, that if you're looking for an endless stream of leads where you get to help a lot of people that find themselves stuck with a property, and they either need to list it or they are going to sell it to an investor, depending on their circumstances and the condition of the property, you've just hit pay dirt, because you've got the best of both worlds. You've got the leads, and you've got the opportunity to help someone move forward with their life. And that really is what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think that it's counterintuitive to agents for two reasons, because they see it and they don't see the immediate payback that they expect. A lot of the companies that sell the data or coaching systems make it sound like they're going to get rich quick and it's easy. I hear all the time, it's easy. And it's a lot of things. It's not easy.
It's not easy.
And so I would say, number one, that look for where it's hard, look for problems, because when we solve problems, we get paid, we create value for customers, and we get paid as a result. So probate by definition is one problem, somebody died, and then a series of problems as a result of that. And if you unwind all that knot, that's really what the job is. There was a great podcast called The Gordian Knot, and he kind of explains that process, that we're looking for those problems, not avoiding them. And second, I think that real estate agents don't understand the long tail of marketing. I remember when I was running a team of kind of standard retail agents, we used a CRM called Boomtown, and Boomtown both was a tool to follow up on leads, as well as you bought your leads. You could buy your leads through them. And so by buying the leads, they could track, the lead date from opening to closing. And they did a study for all their clients at one point, a couple years ago, and it had the average time period from a new lead to closing. The average was 2 years plus.
Wow.
Now, obviously that, clients only started hiring, they would start with Boomtown, and some clients only had been clients for a year or 2 years or 3 years. So the average is by definition skewed short, not long. And so what I try to tell agents is, you have to, yes, we want deals in the first 30 and 60, 90 days, of course, but you have to have a system to nurture people for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I've had clients who initially said, oh, we're going to keep the property, and they rent it for a year, and they realize, oh my gosh, the last thing I want to do is be a landlord. Or we're going to fix it up and flip it, and they realize after a year what a nightmare that can be for them. And so if you don't stay in touch with them, if you just call them and they tell you, oh, we're keeping the property, and you throw the lead away, you're missing the whole point. The point of our business is to create relationships. The relationships create the business. And sometimes the person who says, well, we're not selling the property, but we have 3 others, can you help me sell my rental property? That's really the gold in our business. It's the long tail, not the short tail.
Yeah. And I preach that all the time. So marketing and branding are 2 things that I specialize in too. And I tell people that when you initiate this process called marketing, you'll get deals maybe the first month with your marketing materials, second, third, but statistically, you're going to get 80%, 81% of your deals at or beyond the 5th mailing. But your competition, 90% of the people will quit on or before the 3rd mailing. So all you have to do is understand this principle and stay in the game, and you will come out on the other side a winner. Because with probates, every month there is a new list. So this list builds on the next list, and you can build a very profitable business. And like you said, you've got to look down the road and understand how all this works. And that is another thing that will set you apart from your competition, for sure, because they don't understand this.
Well, not only do they understand it, they didn't think about it. They just jumped in, and they're spending money and don't realize that, and can't maintain it. So I tell people, you need to have a budget in mind where you can last without any business from this marketing venture for at least 6 months. Yep. Doesn't mean that you don't want to deal shorter or faster than that. And I've had deals come in and close them in 10 days. But I think to be a responsible business person, you have to have a budget in place and a plan in place that lasts at least 2 years. In fact, mine is really, I contact everybody in my database every week, via email, I use social media every week. The old days of sending them something once a month just doesn't work. You have to be more in contact with them. So you have to have that budget built in. And if you're buying data and it's, I don't know, $500 a month, let's say, and you only have a couple $1,000s to invest, you're not going to last, because at the end of 6 months, you may or may not have a deal. You're going to, like you say, I think it's shorter than that, Sharon. I don't mean to argue, but I would say 90%, I think, mail one time and quit. Or I should say this, 90% either don't even mail. They buy the data once, and faced with the prospect of having to mail out, don't even do that, or mail once and the phone doesn't ring off the hook and they give up at that point. So I think you're right.
Yeah, I think it's in that range, because I think the point is that they never make it to the 3rd mailing. Never. So your perceived competition is not really your competition. It may be just a tiny little bit, but most of the people are not going to stay in the game, because, like you said, it's not easy. Probates are not easy, but once you understand and you get systems in place, you can automate a lot of this. And once you know that you have to stay in touch with these people a lot, then it's a game changer for your business. I did want to ask you about with realtors and your agents in your office, do you have formal training for them, or how do they learn about probates as from an agent's perspective?
Well, so if you're training from a specifically probate point of view, forgetting all the other training, right? There's business planning and prospecting and lead follow-up and technology and all those things that we have, definitely. Probate specifically, my team, I do a weekly, probateweekly.com. I do a weekly call. In fact, you're a guest on it tomorrow, I think, at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, where we talk about all things probate. I have a couple other people that I encourage them to listen in on. Alltheleads.com does a great mastermind, and they record that on YouTube. And then internally, I'm with a national real estate company, eXp Realty, and I host an agent training for probate in my team. We have a 980-person probate group in our company of 69,000 agents that I train for every week. So I do a training every week on specifically probate issues. I think that there's in California, we have a separate form for probate purchase. We have a form for probate listings. And I always tell agents, start with the forms, because it's amazing to me. Again, maybe just my parents, my upbringing, amazing to me how many people will say, well, I want to learn about probate. And I say, okay, good. Have you read the probate purchase agreement form? Have you read the probate listing form? No. Well, why don't you start with just reading the form? Because a lot of the law is laid out in the forms. And in California, we're blessed with very, I think, effective association of realtors that creates the forms we use. And they lay out a lot of the details. Now, I'm not saying you'll know everything if you go there, but start with that. So the answer to your question is yes. I do training with my team every week. We have 2 hours of training I do, and then I do one within eXp nationally. I do internally as well. We really get into the nitty gritty, cover the fundamentals of the contracts, and we also cover the nitty gritty of probate problems. And then in my case, to be honest, I mean, it's because I like it. I have agents who call me all the time with problems opportunities, really, paycheck opportunities that they'll call me with, and I get involved with them and I review the cases in detail. So I train them how to do the forms properly, how to market properly. And then as problems come up, because it's so varied, the advantage I have is having done so many, I've seen most problems one way or another, or I can access attorneys to get some help. The average agent can't do that.
Yeah. So when it comes to probate attorneys, if I have the choice to talk directly with the executor or personal representative of the property, I'll choose them every time, because it's been my experience that the attorneys, they know what the value is on the tax assessor site. They don't have any idea what the condition is. They just really don't know. So I always prefer to deal one-on-one with the personal representative when I can. But there's this whole other side of the business that is when the attorneys do have control of the deal, so that you can work with them, you can get on their list, because they all like to, if they've got a really terrible property that needs a ton of work, they don't really want to mess with that. So let's talk about that a little bit. How do you tell your agents to market to probate attorneys?
So I mean, I do an hour-long training on this, so I'll try to summarize it without boring you.
Yeah, give me the short version.
Well, I think I would say there's no short version. That the first attorneys to start with, the ones you're already working with. The biggest missed opportunity is there people who did a probate 3 years ago, and they know what they're doing. And I say, well, why don't you call that attorney, invite them to lunch? Now, of course, with COVID, that's a different story today, perhaps, but whatever the equivalent for you is today. And tell them that you are expanding your business, you're looking to get into probate, and ask them questions. Ask them what they do and where their business is. And are they active in probate? Was that their only case? One thing that's surprising is how few probate cases attorneys do. Or another way of putting it is how rare it is for an attorney to do probate. It varies by county, it varies by state. But in LA County, for example, 95% of probate cases by attorneys are done by attorneys who've done one deal or less in the last 2 years. Now, that's the downside. The upside is it's the relationship, not their probate cases, right? Attorneys tend to be strong people, tend to be referrers, tend to be business oriented, and so that sense are worthwhile. So what I emphasize is, number one, the attorneys you already have relations with. Number two, the attorneys that your clients work with. How do you do that? So I don't know Kentucky law, but in California, you can avoid probate with estate planning, and most commonly with a living trust. So when I sell a house, it can be Bob and Mary Smith, or it can be the trust of the Bob and Mary Smith Trust. I go through I tell agents, go through your database of past clients of closings and see those that bought with a trust and call them and say to them, hey, I'm expanding my business in probate. I noticed you took title in a trust. And I'm curious, who did your trust, if you don't mind sharing with me? And were you happy with them? Because I need to recommend them to other customers like you. Everybody loves that phone call, because either they're going to say, oh, we love our attorney, Betty Boop. She's the greatest. Call her, give her business. We love her. Or they'll say, we hate Betty Boop. She's the worst. Never use her. Either way, they're venting. Your job is to listen. And then also recommend people should have their trust reviewed every 5 years or so. So that's part of the process. I do recommend real estate agents to have a Rolodex of resources. And one would be a low-cost estate plan, medium and high cost. Low cost would be like an online service. I use trustandwills.com. They're fabulous. I have a 10% coupon code that they give me. I give it to my customers. And then a medium would be a lower level attorney cost program, a basic attorney package. And then you need somebody who handles high net worth people. You have to have those three. And so when you call your past clients that have trusts, you ask them, and if they're happy, then you try to slot that attorney as either the medium or the high cost solution, and call the attorney. And I would and here's the key phrasing I tell people, they call the attorney Sharon. Hey, Sharon, Bill Gross. I'm a real estate broker in Los Angeles, specializing in probate. I know that you did a trust for our mutual clients, Betty Boop and Bob, and they said that you were the greatest estate planning attorney. And I'm calling, and here's the key verbiage. Are you still writing estate plans? That verbiage tells them you know their business, because many attorneys start creating estate plans, and as they get more senior and have a book of business, they prefer just to manage the estates for their clients, trust for the clients. And they'll turn over the writing either to a junior attorney or they'll outsource it to somebody else. You're showing them some respect and knowledge of their business up front. And they'll either say, yes, I am still writing them. That sounds great. How do you do intake? Do you do a free consult? Do you have a webinar? Do you have a video about your company? How can I make that handoff effective? Or they'll say, I'm not, but I refer them out to Joe or whatever. Those calls are very warm and easy to make. And I think that we should spend a lot more time digging through our database than cold calling attorneys that we don't know, because attorneys hate cold calling. They hate being marketed to. I don't know why. Yeah. They hate it. So there's my quick 5-minute version of an hour talk.
That's similar to what I tell people. I don't expect attorneys to give up their time for free. We don't like to work for free. So if you have to, even if they're not open to lunch, offer to buy 30 minutes of their time. They will know that you are serious about your business. They'll know that you're not just somebody looking for something for free. But I wanted to circle back to one thing that I noticed. As I said, the leads here, you have to actually get them out of the newspaper, but it has all the information that you need. But to your point of what you said, most probate attorneys might do one here and there, but I would consistently see 2, maybe 3 attorneys in there all the time, but there was one who was definitely the top probate attorney. But you would see month after month after month, when you looked at that, you could tell immediately who was actually working in that field. And it takes doesn't matter where you get your leads. You can look up the same thing and figure that out pretty fast. And then you'll know who your likely person is to contact, because if they're doing a lot of probates, they're bound to come across a lot of distressed properties, and you can bet they're going to have some investor on their list. Now, if that isn't you, you can also bet one day they're probably going to get mad at that investor. And you can always say, if the person that's on your list isn't interested in a property, please let me be your plan B. I believe in relationships. And if they know that there's no pressure here, think of me when you can. And then I always like to tell people, I think the money is in the follow-up too. Thank you notes, go to everyone. If you don't get the deal, I would send a thank you note. If you do get the deal, a tool that I love today for building relationships is a little video thing called Bonjoro, where you just say, hey, Bill, thanks for showing me your property yesterday. We couldn't reach an agreement on price, but I'd like to be considered if you decide to sell in the future. They love that because you've used their name, you've addressed the fact that you didn't put the deal together, but there's no agenda here, just a thank you.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think you're right. It's all about relationships and playing the long game.
Yeah.
Most agents don't do that. Another way to get to those key attorneys you talk about as an agent, I do look at the MLS of all probate listings.
Mm-hmm.
And so of all the properties to look for, if I have a choice, I'd rather my investor buy a probate than a non-probate because that's connected to a probate attorney on the other side. And so that attorney is going to see me working with them and I have an excuse to call them. And I love this, I'll ask when there's a listing, of course, I can't contact the attorney directly. They're the client, so I'm not allowed to. Mm-hmm. But I'll call the listing agent and ask a couple of detailed questions on probate. And often they'll say, well, I don't really know the answer. Why don't you just call the attorney directly? And I feel
so
like
you
that's
get permission.
Get permission.
That's brilliant.
I feel like that's a mistake because it's like inviting me to the sorority house. I mean, why would you do that? That's just not good. So, but it's been great for me. And again, it's about relationships. They don't convert to business in my experience right away. Sometimes they do, but it's about the relationships. And I'll say this, half my business in my probate business is non-probate. It's an attorney who does bankruptcy deals, attorney who does a civil course and has to sell a property. To me, that's part of my probate business, but it's not a probate sale as such.
Yeah, well, that was just folks, that was just $1 million tip he gave you. So you need to go back and re-listen to this part of the show. When it comes to building relationships, you've given a few tips. Do you have any other tips? Because one thing I really want people to understand is there are some key components in real estate that you have to get. One of them that I preach all the time is something you touched on. You have to have a marketing plan. But another thing is you need to understand that everything is about relationships, and you might not see results for 1, 2, 3, 5 years. And then something will come in. They'll remember you if you do this correctly. I know a lot of real estate agents from this business and the one before, and it's a great day when they get to the point where 90% of their business is referrals from somebody buying a house 20 years ago, then they changed, then their daughter bought a house, then their aunt bought a house. It's a great thing because they've done their job correctly.
Yeah, I think that the probate business works for building a referral-based business. And when an attorney recommends the client to list with you, it's a different experience than most other experiences. Are very valuable. On the flip side, those relationships are very valuable. So I drop everything to get them information. I've had so many attorneys say to me, you don't have to get the data for me. Why don't you give me the app or whatever services? And I say, no. You just text me the address and I'll get you the deeds. You don't need to do anything more than that. Yeah. I'm here to help. I have nothing more important to do than to help you, your clients, because by doing business with you, I don't have to spend the hours and hours cold calling like other agents have to do. And that's the trade-off if you want to put that work in.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. I think so many investors, and I think it's especially true for new investors, they're here, they'll do a deal, and then they stop their marketing, they chase that deal they put together, then they've got to ramp up again. Right. They don't spend the time building the relationship, doing the follow-up, doing the proper thank yous, and being of service to people. Right. For some people, and I don't think they're bad people, I think it's something they don't think about. They don't really have a plan for that. So I wanted to kind of end today with a question for you, because I know that investors sometimes work with agents incorrectly. They want agents to do things for them. They don't have a relationship with them. And I'm always trying to talk to people and say, good agents are one of the most valuable resources in your business for a variety of reasons, but for one reason you just mentioned, they know people. You need someone they can say, here, it's very much about a referral business, and let's all bond together and make everybody's business better. But a lot of investors, they don't really know how to properly work with agents. So I want to get your take on that.
Yeah, a lot of my business is with investors, to be honest. I try to explain, and honestly, I've never cut down a tree, but when I've watched people cut trees, they cut from both sides of the tree, or multiple sides.
Yeah.
And so I feel like if I'm attacking the business by going to petitioners, and I'm also going after attorneys and vendors, multiple angles, occasionally I'll get a petitioner will say, "Oh, my attorney is so-and-so." Well, I know that attorney. I call the attorney, and, I work with the petitioner, and it makes the thing go more smoothly. So definitely, I think having multiple angles of attack, is important. I think it makes you more productive in business, and I think makes your customers more comfortable working with you as well. So I definitely try to work on, attacking things from multiple sides, whether it be with attorneys or with petitioners directly, or properties as an investor. Now, investors attack property as property, and they typically are not as relationship oriented, though the best ones are. The best investors I know, they treat me like a resource, and they want to be on my good side. They want my phone call right away. And so I call them when I go on listing appointments. I like to have a cash price in my pocket. So I'll try to get the investor to kind of pre-commit. If the property looks like this, what would you buy it for? I'll give it to you for a shot. But I also work with investors looking for off-market probate listings to go after, again, as a way to not only sell property, which is important, but then we meet that attorney. So for me, it's an added bonus to work in that case. So I work with investors all the time, and I would say that the good ones understand I'm a resource to them and treat me that way, and I work really hard to treat the good investors that way. The problem for realtors is we get so many phone calls when you have a listing when people tell you they're an investor, and they tell you how much money they invest, and they tell you how many deals they do, and they don't do but 10% of that. And we get resentful about it. That's just how some people are. But in my case, I would say that I work with investors all the time, and it's a very important part of my business.
I think investors need to understand you need to be upfront with the agent. It's like I always tell investors, if you go to your very first REIA meeting and you're not yet an investor, there's nothing wrong with walking up to someone, shaking their hand and saying, "I'm Sharon and I'm brand spanking new, but I'm here to learn." Don't try to be somebody you're not. They will respect you for saying that. If you have an honest question, be yourself. I like the old saying goes, everybody else is already taken. So be yourself.
Well, and get paired up with somebody who's experienced and learn. I think the mistake people make is they want to do the first deal, but they want to do it themselves. And real estate is a team and cooperative business. And when I went to college, I had a scholarship. I had to earn tuition in order to learn. And then you get a job and you get paid little, but you learn a lot and you're younger. And I think in real estate investing, you'd be willing to really hustle in the beginning, not make a lot of money, but you're really there to learn the transactions, learn the business, learn the lingo, meet people. If you're a young investor, you're going to make a lot of money over your career. Focus on learning and growth in the beginning and finding great people to work with, and that will help you get there.
Well, Bill, this has been a great show. I think this is the first time I've had on someone who was more on the agent side that knew anything about probate. So I feel very lucky to have connected with you.
Thank you.
Where can listeners find you if they want to connect with you?
Sure. So I host a weekly call on probate called probateweekly.com. You can register there and you kind of get in my ecosystem that way. That's for Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And then I'm on social media, Bill Gross EXP. So if you go to YouTube, youtube.com/Bill Gross EXP, or Facebook or LinkedIn, you'll find me there.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Bill. This has been such an informative show. And thanks to all the listeners for coming out and spending time with us today and week after week. If you like the show, please leave us a rating and a review over on iTunes. I would sure appreciate it. I will see you all same time, same place next week. Bye for now.